Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the live chat. This one was completely impromptu. I had no lead up to it, so sorry. I wasn't sure if I was going to do a live chat today or not. But I figured, the news was big enough. It's been a pretty crazy day. Why not jump in? Let's talk about the PS5. Let's talk about how we feel about the reveal today. Your opinions, your thoughts. I'm very curious to get your guys' thoughts over on the side on what you think about the presentation. If you were a fan of what Sony did today, if you weren't a fan, I'm very curious. I would love to hear your all's thoughts on this. So the way the live chat works, for anyone that has never done the live chat before, drop your questions over to the side. We will break down whatever you want to talk about. Obviously, the main focus today is going to be the PlayStation 5 specifically. There was just a whole bunch that happened today with that. So definitely that's going to be the main focus. But if there's other things you want to talk about, game releases, the ongoing pandemic, really there's a lot that we can talk about. Today was a pretty crazy day. So yeah, hope everyone's feeling well. I kind of tweeted earlier. Mentally has been a bit of a tough one for me lately. The anxiety has been spiking with all the craziness that's going on in the world right now. Hopefully y'all are not experiencing that. I got like hardly any sleep last night, maybe 3 hours. But you know what? It's been a big news day. So let's jump in. Let's dive in. Let's get some questions going. All right. Patrick jumping in first saying, I'm in Europe. I might fall asleep during this. Hey, everyone. Yeah, sorry. I know it's going to be super late for people over in Europe right now for this chat. I don't know how many people are going to jump in or not because, like I said, I did no build up to it, but hopefully we get some good discussion and some good questions going. Pokeland here saying, fuck the specs. Where's my full PS4 backwards compatibility? Yeah. So first, let's really quick talk about that presentation, right? I'm going to give my opinion first, and then I would love to hear your thoughts on the side on what you think about it. So first, let's get it out of the way. I think the PS5 hardware itself sounds like a pretty awesome system. There's going to be a lot of going back and forth right now. There's a ton going on Twitter between the Xbox Series X, the PlayStation 5. Is there a power gap? Is there not a power gap? Who does it favor? Regardless of all that, I think the system itself, the PlayStation 5, sounds pretty awesome. Overall, regardless of perceived differences or not, I'm excited for the system. I will say, though, I don't think it was the best idea to lead with this. I get that this was supposed to be the GDC presentation. Totally get it. Totally understand why that's what they were going to talk. This exact talk basically was going to happen regardless. I don't know, though, if that's the best way to have your very first reveal, quote, quote, video wise of the PlayStation 5 to lead off with that. I'm seeing a lot of mixed reactions online. I thought the actual presentation itself, if you're interested in the deep dives of the hardware, which was basically what they sold this as, I thought it was a fine enough show. I do think the one mistake, though, was to not have a regular PlayStation 5 fan basically reveal event before this. I think that's why you're seeing so much mixed reaction online. I think had they done this the exact same way they did it, but we had already seen maybe Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or something like that, right? If they had done a separate, like they did the PlayStation meeting, but if they would have done like a digital event like that, had we done that and then we got this, I don't think there would really be any mixed feelings online. I think that maybe the PR mistake here was to lead with this. I don't think that was the best way to go about it. But the actual show itself, I didn't hate it like some people did. I thought it was pretty interesting to hear Cerny's thoughts behind the system. But I do get where people are coming from, where you're seeing a lot of this backlash online, because I think a lot of people, want to see some games. They want to get excited about the PlayStation system itself. And this was a very dry, very deep dive presentation. So I do get why some people are feeling negative about this. As for, your direct question about PS4 backwards compatibility, I hope Sony comes out and makes that really clear soon what exactly is going on with that, because I'm seeing a lot of confusion online. Some people saying, is it just the 100 games or so that they're saying work in boost mode right now? Are things working fine in legacy mode? What's exactly going on? There's so much mixed messaging going on online right now. I'd like to see Sony come out with a PR piece that very crystal clear explains exactly what's going on with backwards compatibility. I think that would help a lot. So Pokeland, I don't think you're the only one there wondering what's going on with that. I'm seeing a ton of confusion online about it. DMV fan 123. I gotta say, I'm a PlayStation fan and I'm buying PS5 day one, but they dropped the ball on this stream and should have communicated what it was better. Yeah, kind of goes off of what I was saying. I think it was a mistake to lead with this. You had it start with Jim Ryan up there kind of really awkwardly. Did anyone else find that awkward? Like the very, very first couple seconds of the presentation when Jim's up there and he kind of just like passes it off to Cerny like really quick and randomly. It was a strange way to start that stream. That was a little weird. And then the audience, it was a weird presentation. I thought the content, what Cerny was talking about, I found that very interesting. But yeah, DMV fan, that's not, I don't think, how they should have started the real marketing ball. I know Sony themselves probably don't see this necessarily as the marketing kickoff for the PS5, but you had like what? I think it peaked at like 600,000 concurrent viewers or something like that. So it's like, Sony, whether you meant for this to be the marketing ball start, it was. Like if you're having over 500,000 people watching something, your marketing is starting now. Like whether that was intentional or not. Anytime you get an audience that big, it counts as marketing. So that, I think, DMV fan was the mistake. Not necessarily this stream in and of itself, but more just this is your first big talking point about PlayStation 5, like besides articles. They probably should have done something else first and then this. Sean Torres saying, hey, man, what is up, Sean? Lucas saying, hey, Benji, did your day get better, bud? It did. It improved. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people that are going to be here on the live chat follow me on Twitter. I was getting caught up in fighting with people. It's not normally my thing. I'm usually good about not doing that. And I was getting aggravated and I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have let that happen. The mistake was diving in there on little sleep and stress. I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, apologies to anyone that follows me on Twitter that wasn't having a fun time with me arguing with a few, hardcore PlayStation fans on there. Shouldn't have done that. Patrick. Drop the ball. Dude, the console is just 10 inferior. Yeah, I think some of the freaking out about the power differences right now, which, again, we're not going to really truly know the power differences until we see games running on these machines, just because there is some pretty big differences. You can look at raw teraflops, and yes, Xbox is higher on that end with a slightly faster CPU. I think it's 3.8 gigahertz versus 3.5. Not a huge difference. It might even be smaller than that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know the CPU is a bit faster. It might even only just be 3.6, something like that. But I don't think the specs gap is that giant. I'm seeing some people go full scale meltdown over this. I don't think anyone should be melting down about the specs differences. If the Xbox is more powerful, it's not like a massive crazy. It's not like we're talking like a 2 times power gap or something like that, right? If these results that we see on paper do play out into the games, I think the main difference is probably going to be stuff like resolution. I don't think it's going to be one of those scenarios where all of a sudden, the PlayStation's just having way worse versions of third-party games or anything. I mean, they're close enough in power. It's basically 10 teraflops to like 12 teraflops. It's not a giant difference. It's, if anything, Xbox games might have a little bit higher resolution and things like that, but that's also not taking into account the SSD, that's faster in the PS5. So I think it's hard to draw super firm conclusions right now on how final games are going to look on these two difference-wise. Xbox appears to have a little bit of an advantage overall, but it'll be interesting to see. Ram here. This was a developer talk. It was always going to be dry to most consumers. I agree, Ram. Like I said, I don't think the issue really is the talk itself. I think they probably should have just done this later or either do this later or have a PS5 event sooner. I think leading with this was the problem. Sean, do you think this PR misfire might hurt Sony? That's a super talking point that I'm seeing all over the place? I don't think so, at least definitely not long term. I don't think long term, if this is a misfire, which I think it kind of is PR wise, will hurt them. I doubt it. I'd be shocked if this like really negatively impact PS5 sales. I don't think so. I think in the short term, it might a little bit because I think most of us agree now, even if you're a really big PlayStation fan, I think we can mostly agree that Microsoft is just doing a better job messaging. I mean, I do think so. Even if you're a hardcore PlayStation fan, you're getting a PS5 and you're not getting an Xbox. I do think that Microsoft is just being a lot better in terms of communication specifically. So maybe in the very short term, things like, attention on Twitter or things like this. The PS5 event was huge, right? It had 600,000 viewers. So, I mean, PlayStation is not doomed by any means. Anyone thinking doom and gloom, I would not suggest that at all. Maybe in the short term, they take a little bit of a PR hit, but I don't think it really affects PS5 sales. I don't think so. They still have a lot of time to turn around the kind of overall vibe right now. Ram, I think Sony did a good job at communicating what tech will make PS5 an interesting development in games. I think so. I think they did a good job of talking about the thought process behind it. I don't think there was anything really wrong on that end at all. DMV fan 123. Momentum is in Microsoft's court, but it's still early days. Yes, kind of what I was saying. Sony could show up in an event in May and show a trillion exclusives and features and shift the favor to them. Exactly. Here's one thing I would say to PlayStation fans who might be kind of over the roof right now. Here's the thing. Maybe you didn't love what they showed today. Maybe you wanted something, maybe they didn't meet your expectations. Here's the thing. Once Sony comes out and shows Horizon Zero Dawn 2, once they show the next God of War, once we see the next Spider-Man, right? These massive first-party PlayStation games, the conversation is going to shift really fast back to excitement. So I get a vibe that the overall feeling from the PlayStation fan base is kind of low after this, but I think that changes real quick. As soon as Sony starts showing those big games, it's going to go right back towards excitement. So maybe people are a little bummed right now. But that's going to change, right? Microsoft is riding a little bit high right now. Their messaging has been really strong, really on point. But I think Microsoft has a lot more to prove in terms of games than Sony does. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that Xbox is, they've got no games. I'm not one of those kind of people. But I think we can agree they have more to prove on the software side than Sony does. So once Sony comes out here and starts talking about those huge exclusives, things are going to go right back to excitement really quick. Long Lost Shinobi, I think that's what it is, with a 1. I hope many of y'all would understand that this was not meant for the general public. Definitely agree, Long Lost, in terms of it wasn't meant for the public. But like I mentioned before, if you have over 600,000 people viewing, if your job is PR and marketing, you need to be aware that is how it is going to be taken. So regardless of if that's how they felt about it or not, that's the reality of what happened. You had over 500,000 people watching this show. That's about as big of marketing as you're going to get for anything. So my response to that would be definitely that wasn't the intention, I don't think, but they should have been more aware that's how it's going to be received. Patrick, Digital Foundry dropped the direct 1 hour ago. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, Patrick. I actually just got done shooting a PlayStation podcast that's going to go up late tonight and tomorrow. I'll tweet that out. I was just on a really fun PlayStation podcast. So the past hour I was shooting that podcast as a guest, and now I'm straight to this. So I didn't see that yet, Patrick. The console is much, much closer than what people think. Wouldn't surprise me. Higher clock speed, so the teraflops work higher too. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Like I said, I think Xbox probably, when all is said and done, will have a slight power advantage, but I don't think it's the end of the world. If anything, you're going to see probably maybe a little bit of resolution differences. I don't expect this to be one of those scenarios where it's like, oh man, the gap's so huge. Xbox games look way better. Nothing like that. If anything, it might just have a bit higher resolution. The core assets are probably going to basically be identical. Sean saying they shouldn't have invited the public. I think it was okay to stream it, just not necessarily maybe in the way they did. RAM, the next gen will be much more interesting due to differences. Yeah, that's an interesting thing in hardware between Xbox One and PS5, as well as the differences in services. I'm looking forward to it. I agree, RAM. I think next gen is going to be more different than this gen was. Both seem to have advantages in different places. The overall raw GPU power of the Xbox is a little bit better. The SSD speed is way faster on the PS5, so it'll be interesting to see how developers tackle the strengths of the various consoles. Like you said, services are going to be different. Next gen looks like a bigger divergence than the current gen, so that's going to be interesting. And even the way they run's different, right? Like someone, I think it was Sean just mentioned, a RAM, that the speeds are different too. So not like way different in terms of like the speeds on the GPU. So not only is the raw teraflop number different, but also the speeds are a lot different. So it's going to be an interesting gen. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Luis Vasquez. I found the presentation so interesting, but I can see most people finding it boring or dry. Exactly, Luis. I think most people can agree with that. The core info was interesting. The presentation of it, though, was a little, it was dry, which for people like me and you who are hardcore, specs people or hardcore, tech kind of people, it's interesting. But if you're someone that's, let's face it, most of these 600,000 people are not that. Most of these 600,000 people are just PlayStation fans. So if you just tuned in casually expecting to see, hey, here's what the PS5 box looks like, and here's, maybe if some people were expecting that like the Sony presentation back in for the PS4, I can see why some people were very upset. So I get it. Patrick, PS4 was 30% more powerful than One. Xbox One X is 15% more powerful, but PS5 has higher clock speed. This could mean that PS5 is just 10% lower. Again, Digital Foundry posted the Direct, and PS5 seems really unique. Yeah, I'm going to have to watch that. I really admire the Digital Foundry guys. They do excellent work. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Showing, he was talking to devs, not consumers, but at the same time, once you put it on YouTube, it becomes a different animal. You could not be more accurate there, Showing. That's the exact right take. This was meant to be the GDC presentation, which wouldn't have probably been on YouTube like this. I think there hasn't been really any indication that their plan was always to stream this online. It was going to be part of GDC. So it makes, when you see the video and you think about it from those terms, it makes perfect sense. But like you said, once it's out there on YouTube and you have the official PlayStation account, tweeting about this and stuff, it becomes a whole different beast. Zero the Silent Hero. Do you think they should have said in the initial tweet that it was based around their canceled GDC conference rather than ride the misplaced hype? I think they probably could have communicated this better. The original tweet kind of indicated that this was maybe going to be a dry thing. The original tweet did not mention anything about games, didn't mention get game reveals. It said what it was, a deep dive with system architect, Mark Cerny. But that was kind of it. So if you were someone that's not super clued in, you're a casual gamer and you see that tweet, you might be going in with bigger expectations. So I think Zero the Silent Hero, they probably could have labeled it a little more clearer just to make it very clear, like, hey, this isn't our main PS5 reveal event. This is just for people that really want to talk about specs. They maybe could have labeled it a little bit clearer to kind of curb some of the expectations. Benji. Hi, Benji. Why did Sony choose that platform for their first PS5 presentation? They should have known it wasn't consumer friendly. I do agree with you on that they should have kind of known that this was going to be the reaction. I don't think that should have surprised them. Why they chose it that way, I think it was because it was timed for this time anyways, because it was going to be at GDC. And they probably knew specs were going to leak because, dev kits are probably extremely common now. I would expect now that we're in, what is it, the 18th? We're straight in the middle of March. Dev kits got to be everywhere. So I suspect they knew specs were going to leak anyways. So they wanted to make sure that the communication was getting out from them so they could fully explain their thought process behind it without leaks. So I think that's probably why this happened now. Elias Stapleton, Digital Foundry just said in a video that teraflops are just a metric, but teraflop doesn't measure the performance. Another thing, I'm seeing a lot of developers very happy with the conference because this was a conference for devs, but I think they have to do something soon, another conference. Elias, my thought is they need to show PS5 games by the end of April. Honestly, that's my thought. My takeaway from this is I don't think they should wait another 3 months to show games. I think if you let this kind of simmer and boil, because if you look online, it is very mixed, even among PlayStation fans. It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, just Xbox fanboys are digging into PlayStation, or, just, certain things. It's more like just a lot of people, even PlayStation fans, feel kind of mixed about what happened. I think by the end of April, they should do an actual games showcase. I think if they wait later, it's probably not the right call. But, I mean, I don't work for Sony, so maybe they think differently. But my thought, by the end of April, I think they should at least show a game. Maybe you don't do the full blowout, but I think we should see something. That'll be surprising to me if they're just sit on this for the next 3 months or something. That would be an interesting choice. Tyson of Time, we've all been there, probably referring to me freaking out on Twitter. Yeah, sorry about that. I usually don't do that. I'm usually not a combative person on Twitter. I try not to do that. It's not fun for anyone. It's not fun for me. It's not fun for the person I'm arguing with, and it's not fun for the people that are having to read that. I try to avoid being combative, but I kind of got there today. It was, I'll try not to do it again. Patrick Bitar, exactly. Digital Foundry and developers really seem to be hyping up PS5 more than Series X. Really interesting. Interesting. I haven't seen as much of that from the developer side, but you could be right. I don't know. I don't know about that. I just don't know. Metal Fly. I think Jason Schreier got a point there. It's bad marketing to only release the specs, which look worse than the competitors' ones at first without showing anything more than that. Exactly. Completely agree, Metal Fly. It was all about the timing of this show and how they did it. Here's the thing. Let's say we had a PlayStation event at the end of February, even if it was just like a digital show. I get why there wouldn't be a consumer one or one with media right now with everything that's going on. But let's say at the end of February, they did a show like they did with the PS4. Let's say you saw Horizon Zero Dawn 2. It looked mind-blowing. The visuals, the graphics, it was blowing your mind, the size of the world, the read speed. And then they did this and the teraflop number was 10.3. Would anyone really care? I don't think so. Maybe like the most hardcore people that are just getting in arguments online. Maybe those people would still be like, we're going to fight over the teraflop number. But your average person, you're just going to be hyped at how awesome Horizon looked. So who really cares that it's 10 teraflops compared to 12 because Horizon looks amazing, or some other Sony exclusive. I'm just using Horizon as an example because I think Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is close. I think it's in the first year of the PS5. So I don't think then anyone would care. The issue is like you said, and that's a great point from Jason, is that you don't show any games or anything. You just come out with like a spec sheet. And if you just look at the spec sheet, it looks like your competitor's stronger in a couple categories. Just probably wasn't the right PR move. Makes sense for developers, but probably in terms of, PR, probably wasn't the best way to go about it. Jorge Torres, sup? How you doing, man? Doing much better, Jorge. Thank you. Hope you're doing good too. Elias Stapleton, if Series X is better in power, why devs are hyping up more PS5 than Series X? Is not a fanboy, but devs are being more in love with PS5 than Series X. What do you think? I don't know. I haven't seen as much of that as a couple of you are saying, so I might be out of the loop on that. There might be more dev talk than what I'm aware of. I will agree. I haven't seen many devs talk about Xbox in general. So I don't know. Maybe that SSD speed will make a huge difference. We'll have to see in the games. Maybe whenever we start seeing some games that super fast SSD speed, maybe it does make like a real difference. That's definitely a possibility. The other part of it could be, I think that actually devs got briefed a lot later on Series X specs than PS5, kind of from something that I heard, and I'm not positive about this, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think Jason tweeted something about this as well, that final Series X specs actually came pretty late. Devs didn't hear about it much before we did in terms of final spec on that. So Could be wrong, but I think people knew what PS5 was longer than the Series X. But I don't want to put words in Jason's mouth. I know I heard that, but I don't want to say for sure he did. I just thought I remembered him saying something like that. Benji, it seems the gap when it comes for ray tracing will be huge. Could this impact Sony's games? That's an interesting question because that's one part of the presentation Sony did not touch much on. It was super fast. They kind of and they didn't really show tech demos. I think that was the other problem with this presentation, right? I think if there would have been more tech demos in it, even if you don't show full games, but you kind of show off like some of the speeds, like Microsoft used some pretty basic stuff. We saw Minecraft with ray tracing. And then whenever they did the SSD loading, it was just like state of decay. We did not see Halo Infinite or anything like that. So you can't give Microsoft like too much credit, but they did show like a little bit of tech demos. And we have seen Hellblade 2, for example. I think this could have helped the presentation if Sony sprinkled in a little bit more there. Maybe if you didn't show us the games, but you show us like a really brief ray tracing demo or a really brief evidence of how fast those speeds are with loading. I think that would have helped. Ray tracing is interesting because we don't really know. Microsoft has shown it. You know, they showed it with Minecraft full scale ray tracing. So we basically know what Xbox is capable of in that regard. PlayStation, we don't because they just went over that piece so fast. So it could be that there's a difference there, could not be. It might just be Sony chose not to focus on that during this. But yeah, I will agree that's kind of an unknown. We know PlayStation 5 can do it. It is RDNA 2, you know, just like the Xbox is. It has that ray tracing technology. We just don't know for sure with the teraflop difference and things like that exactly how it shakes out. So yeah, that will be interesting to watch because that's one question still to all this. Elias saying that Jason said the specs seem worse, but it doesn't necessarily mean it. Yeah, we won't know until we see games. Until launch, when we see games side by side, we won't really know the true difference in performance. Tyson of Time. I'm personally glad the systems aren't identical. I agree with you. Like this gen might see more unique changes from system to system. I'm fine with that. Yeah, I agree, Tyson. It makes it a little more interesting when you get comparison videos, right? This gen, it was basically every game was almost the same assets. It was just very slight resolution differences or maybe very slight shadow differences. Like that was mostly it, right? And especially as we made the jump to like, you know, the 4K machines, checkerboarding can look so close to 4K anyways that it like the differences between the consoles were fairly minimum. It looks like next gen's a bigger difference. So that'll be interesting to see. Jorge Torres. So the SSD will be a big deal for PS5 exclusives, but how that applies for third-party games. Yeah, that's a good question. I believe it was one of the Digital Foundry guys stated that he thinks really the ones that'll take major advantage of that SSD difference is going to be the first-party Sony devs, and maybe third parties won't as much, which I kind of agree with to a degree because they're going to be making the game across platforms anyways. So I suspect third-party games, no matter what, are going to load faster on the PS5 just because the SSD is basically, I think, over twice the speed of the Series X one. So load time should be, no matter what, faster on PlayStation 5. If they're not, something weird's going on there. So I suspect, like he said, the first party devs are going to be the ones that really take advantage of that because they're the ones that are just making it for one system. They don't need it to work off of the read speeds, right? For the Series X, doesn't really matter. They're not hampered in any way by that. So if they want to load in assets super, super, super fast using the SSD, they can only program for the PS5 and be fine. So I'd agree with that. You might see third parties also take advantage of the PS5 SSD a little bit as well, more, you know, but I suspect first party Sony is going to be where that SSD really shines, where the difference between speeds, that's going to be really who takes advantage of it. Elias Stapleton, RPG, PS5 is a rogue based on agility and utility efficiency, and Series X is raw power. That's a fun way of phrasing it, and basically true, right? The Xbox went wide and slow for their power. You know, they use 56 or 54 CUs at a lower clock rate, whereas PlayStation went with 36 CUs, and they went a lot faster on the speeds. So it's two totally different strategies on how to get to that power. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Totally different mindsets on how to get there. All right. JP Dunks. Concern with PS5 is the thermals. Yes, I'd agree. Variable clock speed SSDs are really sensitive to temps. Yes. So the PS5 runs fast, really fast. I mean, crazy fast clock speeds. So they better have some damn good cooling in there. I know that was part of the actual original thing that came out of Bloomberg, where they were saying PS5 might be more expensive than Sony were kind of wanting it to be. Maybe, we don't know yet, but part of that was because they were saying that the cooling solution was so advanced. Now seeing that it is indeed clocked that high, I am more inclined to believe that Bloomberg article. They must have some really advanced cooling solutions in there, because that thing, if they're not cooling it extremely well, is going to run hot. So I suspect, yeah, that it's going to have some advanced cooling. Especially for a console chassis, right? Which you got to imagine PS5 is not going to be huge. It's not going to be like a PC tower, a giant box. So yeah, the cooling's got to be on point. Ramses Cabrera. Hi, Benji. Your live chats are great. Thank you, Ramses. Thank you. I really enjoy doing these. So thanks. I appreciate it. Given that the specs of both consoles have already been disclosed, do you think we can now make an educated guess on the price of PS5 and Xbox Series X? As a total guess, because that's really all we can do still, I think Xbox is going to be more expensive. I think PS5 is going to come around $450. I know that sounds weird because they're usually in $100 increments, but I think Sony's going to desperately try to stay away from 500, and I think they might go a little bit more expensive than they wanted to with the cooling. I think the original plan was probably to try to come in at $399, but maybe the price got pushed up a little bit. This is a guess, but I'm going to guess PS5 is probably around $450, and I'm going to guess the Series X is $500 at least. At least purely from spec, the Series X sounds like a monster. Outside of the SSD, where PlayStation's more powerful, the rest of the tech in the Xbox sounds expensive. I'll be shocked. I will be utterly shocked if Microsoft announces Series X is less than 500. I would completely be floored by that. I don't expect that in any way. Patrick. Just like Elias said, watch the Digital Foundry video. I absolutely will, Patrick. Once I'm done with this, like I said, I was just on another podcast. I literally went from that podcast, ran upstairs, grabbed a drink, and hopped onto the live chat because I felt like I owed you guys a live chat. We got a fun community here. I was fired up today, and there was a lot of news. So I owed this to you guys. Myself, too. I wanted to come on here and talk. Metalfly. Okay, just responding there to Elias. Knothead 619. Do you think maybe Sony is holding back because they don't want to steal the thunder from all the good games coming out? That's a prevailing theory. Maybe they have a game in the works that will show the system off. That's definitely a prevailing theory, Knothead. And the further we go, the further I believe that's probably true. Especially now that we did this presentation, we still saw 0 games. I do wonder, Knothead, if that is a actual form of thinking right now at Sony. They don't want to overshadow Final Fantasy, The Last of Us, and Ghost of Tsushima. Could be. Like, those games look amazing, but what if all of a sudden they showed Horizon Zero Dawn 2? Personally, my opinion, I don't think it would hurt the sales of those games. But maybe they think, hey, if all of a sudden we show like a next-gen game and it looks utterly insane, because that's the other thing. People should be excited because the PS5 and the Series X are both enormous leaps over current gen. So regardless of which side of the aisle you fall, if you're more excited for Xbox, if you're more excited for PlayStation 5, here's the good news. They are both monsters, like monsters. The gap is bigger than it sounds from last gen because they're on a different fabrication. It's RDNA 2. It's a different technology than the old GCN. So even that quote, quote, teraflop number, which doesn't mean everything, that's actually a bigger gap to current gen than it sounds. So here's the good news. Next gen is going to be crazy. Whether that's why Sony have been still holding back from showing games could be that they don't want to overshadow the marketing cycle of their current ones. It's possible. Zero the Silent Hero. I wonder whether the planned spec reveal for GDC means an actual full reveal is on the way in the very near future, 5/5/20. I think it should be Zero. It's kind of what I mentioned earlier. I would shoot for late April or maybe early May, like you said there. I think it'd be a bit of a mistake to go further than that. I don't love the idea of pushing game reveals super far away, because if they wait till after May, let's say they go June, you're looking at June, July, August, September, October. I mean, a half a year or less before the console comes out. You can do that. It has been done before. I just don't love the idea. It seems like a very short time to get all the marketing for those games in there. So I would think it's smarter to show some games here soon, maybe late April, early May. Elias Stapleton. I am a big PlayStation fan, of course. Microsoft has been very clear and better with the message of the Series X. I appreciate that, Alliance, because I agree with you. But when Sony shows Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War 2, all will be forgiven and forgotten. I agree, 100%. Once people see these next-gen games, the bit of the downer vibe that's going on right now is going to change very rapidly. Benji, I think Sony really put Microsoft on the map next-gen with the poor communication so far. I definitely think it's helped Xbox. The PS4 dominated this gen, and there was no hype whatsoever for next-gen Xbox. It all changed. I agree with you, Benji, that Sony has helped Microsoft unintentionally. I still fully suspect the PlayStation 5 is going to outsell the Xbox, especially globally. I feel very confident in globally. US might be kind of close because it's not actually a huge gap in the US between the PS4 and the Xbox One. And people seem a lot more excited about Series X than they ever were for the Xbox One. You know, it's hard to remember now because it was years ago. But leading into the Xbox One, outside of like really hardcore Xbox fans, people were very down on the Xbox One because Microsoft had terrible messaging for that platform. So I do think that Microsoft's in a better position than they were, but I'm not doom and gloom on PlayStation. I think they're going to come roaring right back here real soon. Elias. Most important thing here, Benji, is Sony did this very early in the year. Yes, that's the good news. We are only 3 months in 2020. There are 8 more months until release. Just wait for the exclusives. I agree. They still got time to turn it around. I think people shouldn't freak out too much online. JP Dunks. Backwards compatibility was a letdown. That's probably the one big miss. That's probably the one thing where it's like, yeah, the messaging there that wasn't great. We'll see how that plays out actually at launch. You know, we'll see maybe once we get there, it doesn't sound as bad as it does right now. But yeah, with Xbox going all the way back to OG Xbox games, one thing Microsoft talked about was how they're going to be enhancing a bunch of those old games. They even said they're going to be able to get probably HDR into original Xbox games on some of them. They showed a demo of Fusion Frenzy that got it. Like, that is the one area messaging wise where I feel like Sony is a lot behind, but it's not the end of the world. Backwards compatibility is very cool, but more people are buying and playing the newest games than really old ones. That's not to take away from backwards compatibility. I think it's a very cool and important feature, especially as people spend all this money that they can still play these games. But yeah, that is the one area where I feel like Sony kind of dropped the ball a little bit today, was the backwards compatibility. And then Benji asking a question about that too. Yep. Knothead, do you think the way Sony is doing the expansion of the memory, this is interesting, will be better than the cards you need for the Series X? So we know the speed is better. We know it's a lot faster. One thing that's going to be interesting to see is Sony said you can use third-party SSDs, but they basically have to be approved by Sony because they have to be fast enough. And from what I understand, I'm not the most advanced tech guy, so if I'm making a mistake here, I apologize. But from what I understand, there's not actually currently SSDs on the market, at least not many, that would meet that recommendation. So in the future, it is going to be a very valuable thing because let's say in 2 years, these kind of SSD speeds are common. Let's say there's a lot of SSDs on the market like that. It will pay off in the long term. But from what I understand, at least right now, there's not many SSDs you could add to it anyways, because it has to meet their requirements. So In the long run, I think it's a good thing for PlayStation because you're probably going to be able to get them cheaper than like a proprietary thing like Xbox is doing, but it might take a little bit for that to pay off. You know, it might not just pay off right off the bat. Sean Torres, they shouldn't have posted on Twitter. They could have sent the video in emails. That was their mistake. I think the main thing, I think it was okay to post on Twitter and stuff. They probably should have just made it crystal clear. Don't go in with super high expectations here. I think that's probably what they, in terms of like game reveals. Zero the Silent Hero. What do you make of that part about Sony and AMD mimicking the audio chip of the PS3? Pie in the sky teaser for the possibility of PS3 backwards compatibility later on. You know, interesting. I thought the audio thing was cool. The ear stuff was a little weird. I see a lot of people posting like already kind of memes about that, like Mark Cerny talking about scanning our ears and our heads and stuff. That was kind of a funny segment, I think unintentionally, because when I was watching it, I was like, I don't know that I want Sony scanning my head and having my head in their database. I mean, it's probably not the end of the world, but it is kind of weird. So I actually am excited about the tech, though. The tech sounds very, very cool, like having really advanced audio, especially, you know, they brought up VR multiple times. So VR fans should be excited because they talked about that multiple times, that it really helps sell that you're in another world if you can have really advanced audio. So that was cool. Whether it means PS3 backwards compatibility later on, I don't know. Hopefully it would be awesome. But I am excited about the audio stuff, even if the way they talked about it was a little strange. GC2F guy, is there more to come for PlayStation 5? And have you heard anything about Grand Theft Auto 6? Grand Theft Auto 6 is definitely coming. Probably the next big game from Rockstar. Maybe you see Bully 2 before that as a bit of a side project for them. Still obviously a big thing, but I suspect the next major flagship Rockstar game, yes, is Grand Theft Auto 6, and that's probably going to get here, I would say, 2022, maybe 2021. I would not expect it before late 2021 at the absolute soonest. Absolute. Could be 2022. And as for more to come for PS5, definitely. There will be soon. You know, hopefully it's not too long. Zero the Silent Hero. Honestly, these live chats are really cool. Appreciate them. Thank you, Zero. They're probably my favorite thing I do. I think I like even doing these more than posting on Twitter, because I feel like it's not like the biggest streams. You know, I get like between probably 20, 30, sometimes 40 people in these streams. I'm not like a huge streamer. I'm not out there getting thousands of people in stream. But the people I get in them, I really value. I feel like people ask good questions. It's great. These are really fun. Benji, do you think the lower specs of the PS5 indicates a lower price? Yes, I do. I think it's going to be a little bit cheaper. I don't know if it's going to be gigantic price difference, but I think it's going to be a little bit. I think it's probably going to be $50 or so, maybe $100, but I'm guessing it might not be $100 price difference because I think the cooling is going to be expensive because of how fast those clock speeds are. So I think PS5 is going to come in cheaper. I'm going to guess, as a complete guess, $50 less. G2C2F guy. I'm still going to get PlayStation 5 PSN forever. Me too. I'm pumped for it. I am pumped for it. I think some PlayStation fans were upset with me online because I was talking about it looks like Xbox is more powerful, and as if that was like a stab at PlayStation. It's not. I'm really excited for the PS5 still as well. Trust me. But yeah. Real Tat. Oh, he left the basement. Awesome stream quality. Well, I'm happy to hear the stream quality is better. I am still in the basement, actually. I rearranged some things, and I think somehow that helped my internet signal. I don't know. If the stream's coming in clear for you guys, that's awesome. I noticed it in the last live chat whenever I was watching it. I watch my live chats back usually one time just to make sure I'm on my P's and Q's, that I'm not out here looking like a dummy. And I thought I noticed that too. I thought it looked like the stream was probably better quality. Ace Evil, I don't believe Dev Talk after Wii U. That is a funny comment. Yeah, that is funny. Benji, isn't it odd the storage on, what time is it? 43? We'll go for about 10, 15 more minutes. All right. I usually feel like an hour stream is kind of like the perfect amount of time to get in everyone's questions before like a bunch of, we're repeating ourselves. So we'll still go for like 15 minutes. Isn't that odd that the storage on the PS5 is not at 1 terabyte? It's a significant gap, pretty much 1 or 2 game size. I don't know what's going on with that, Benji. That's a great question. Have we found out? Because it said that the PlayStation 5 hard drive is, someone can correct me on this, I think it's like 825 to 875 gigabytes, something like that. It's basically, it's less than a terabyte. It's somewhere in the eights. Now, is that the full size, or is that the size not allocating like system stuff? Because that is a weird size, right? I mean, it's just weird. Usually it's like a 750 or like a 1 terabyte. It's like a weird in between size. I don't know what's going on there. I actually don't. I don't know why why they didn't just go for a terabyte if it's not a terabyte, if it was kind of that close already, right? You know, it's not super far away if it's in the 800 gig range. So I don't know what's going on there. It's a bit of a weird number. GC2F guy, do you think we will have to pay for PlayStation Plus? I don't know about everyone else, but I don't like that. Yep, I don't think they're going to take that away. They make too much money off it. If you ever look at Sony's financials, they make a fortune off of PS Plus subs. I know it's a bummer having to pay for online. You know, you don't have to on PC. I pay for Xbox Live and PlayStation, so it gets expensive, but they just make too much money to drop that. Plastic Hearts Podcast, giving the thumbs up here. Thanks for coming in, Plastic Hearts. You're always someone really positive on my Twitter feed, so I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Plastic Hearts. Wound Up, what's up? Good to see you, Wound Up. Happy to see you in here. Benji, I think we can compare the PS5 and Xbox Series X to GameCube and the original Xbox. Yes, the original Xbox was way more powerful, but the GameCube was very capable despite the gap. Probably a close comparison, right? I kind of get what you're coming at. It looks like on paper the Series X has a decent power gap, especially on the GPU side, but I have a feeling the PlayStation 5 is going to make a lot of that gap up. I think they're going to be pretty close when all is said and done. Maybe a slight advantage for Xbox, but nothing crazy. Plastic Hearts Podcast. Since cooling is going to be essential to PS5, yes. Will the radical look of the dev kits carry over to the final build? At least that weird pizza slice in the middle. It's a great question. And this does go back to what I was originally theorizing. You know, I originally said, whenever I saw that V shape, I was like, I think this indicates like this thing's running hot. And I saw a lot of people were responding to me whenever I tweet stuff like that. And they were saying, well, you know, it's because they're stacking them. I don't think it's because of the stacking. Maybe even a dev said that, but I think it's to get that thing cool because those clock speeds are crazy. Now, whether that will be in the final kit, who knows? But they got to have something super advanced. So whether it's that that cutout like we've seen, or whether it's something totally different, they're going to have something advanced because you got to cool that bad boy if it's running that hot. Patrick Bitar, I'm going to bed. Great chat, Benji. Yes, good night, Patrick. Have a great night. Thanks for coming in. We're going to wrap the chat up in only about 10 minutes anyway, so you ain't going to miss too much. Benji, people should not take too much from the Digital Foundry video. The guys are tech enthusiasts. They are all with the Switch specs to this day. No disrespect to the Switch I love. I get what you're saying. The Switch is amazing for what it is. Digital Foundry, I think, are great. I love those guys. But the truth is we won't know until we see games running on it. That is the truth. I super like Digital Foundry, though, so I do respect what they say, and I'm definitely going to watch them. But you do have a point in that we won't know for sure until we still have not seen games running on these. Even whenever we saw Hellblade 2 from Microsoft, it was just a trailer. There was zero gameplay. It was just like kind of showing you the goal of the game. We need to see gameplay running on these consoles before we know exactly what they're capable of. That is definitely true. Elias, Benji, ¿cómo estás? Hablamos español. I do not speak Spanish. I think that's what you're asking me, Elias. I do not, and I apologize. I should learn it. I'm in the U.S. So many people in the U.S. speak Spanish. I should pick that up. I really, honestly should. Absolutely. Moist and delicious. I'm hella confused. Is it 825? Yes, I agree. Is it 825 gigabyte with the system memory or without? I agree. I have no idea, Moist and delicious. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if that is the total size or if that's the size with system. It's a weird number. I don't know why you wouldn't just go to 1 terabyte if you're that close already. It's not that much more. You're talking about an extra, 175 gigs on it. So I don't know. It would make sense if that's like allocated for system stuff. But if not, it is weird. Plastic Heart saying, great work as always. Huge fan, and watch the Twitter feed for your takes. Thank you, Plastic Hearts. Thank you so much. Sony for the win. Do you believe that Microsoft's growing services like Game Pass will help push buyers towards an Xbox Series X over a PS5? This is a great question. By a notable amount at launch, despite the PS5's likely lower launch MSRP. Sony for the win. That's a great question, and you also worded it really well. I'm someone who can appreciate the way people word things, especially since I switched to Twitter, because you're constantly in your tweets having to shave off each word you can and get it concise. Is a well-written question. Do I think that Game Pass will push buyers towards Xbox over PS5? Not so much that. What I do think Game Pass will help a lot is going to be upgrading people from Xbox One to Series X. I think that's going to help a lot because you already have a huge library when you jump to the next gen. So I don't know if it necessarily hurts PlayStation 5, but I think it helps Microsoft get people to next gen faster, because it used to be each console generation switch, you were like, man, I got to buy the console, and now I'm going to have to buy multiple games, and I'm going to have to buy an extra controller, and all of a sudden the costs just balloon massively. One thing that's going to help Xbox with Game Pass is all those people that are already subscribed to Game Pass. When they get their Series X, they already have a huge library of games. So it's definitely going to help in that regard. It's going to help them shift consumers over, I think, quicker than they did in the past. Raven Hunter. Benji, what franchise do you want to see Sony bring back? Ooh, fantastic question. Here's one thing. I really hope that Silent Hill rumor is true. Please let it be true. I adored PT, and I love horror. So I know that's not a Sony franchise, but the rumor is that Sony is making it. So, man, I hope that Silent Hill rumor is true. Besides that, a Sony-specific IP, I think it'd be fun to see another PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. I wasn't a big fan of the original. I think it, in fact, I didn't really like the gameplay of it, but I think it'd be fun to see them take another stab at that. That would be a fun kind of off-the-wall one. I think SOCOM would be cool to see a very multiplayer SOCOM. And this isn't a super old franchise, but I'd like to see another Killzone. I like that franchise. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I think some people think Killzone might be gone for good now because we haven't seen one since, Killzone Shadowfall at launch for PlayStation 4, and they're doing Horizon. But I'd also like to see one more Killzone game. Ram. I wonder if Sony's taking out of Nintendo's playbook and looking to keep things closer to their vest this gen. Could be. The 2 to 5 year gaps between game announcements and releases are less than impressive. They could be taking a Nintendo playbook and keeping things quieter. They've definitely been quieter than Microsoft leading into next gen. We'll see if that changes very soon. Definitely could be. Right now, between Xbox and Sony, Microsoft's way more vocal, but that could change. Bart Jacasa. I still don't understand how Sony can't have backwards compatibility with their PS3, PSN digital purchases. It's a bummer. It's a bummer, Bart. Even a lot of really hardcore PlayStation fans are agreeing with you. That was the biggest miss today. It's not that, maybe PS5 is slightly less powerful than X, but the big miss is that backwards compatibility seems to be not great. It's kind of there, but not in a big way. Benji, interesting to see the different approach on both sides. Yeah, fast SSD and 3D sound for Sony versus ray tracing and smart delivery for Microsoft. Yep. Yeah, it's one thing we've been talking about. Definitely just very different approaches to next gen. Should be exciting. Axioms of Fate. There isn't a single SSD right now that would meet their requirements. Okay, thanks, Axioms. That's what I thought I heard. So, like I said, the third-party SSDs in the long run is going to help Sony. Right now in the short term, like Axioms is saying, right now there's no SSD fast enough that you can buy. You couldn't just go out right now and buy a third-party SSD and plug it into your PS5. Now in a couple of years, you probably can. So long term, it's going to help, but day one, it shouldn't make a huge difference between Xbox in terms of what you can get memory-wise. Benji, when can we expect to see games in your opinion? April or May? I doubt it's June. That's crazy. And when I say May, I mean early May. If they don't show a game for PS5 till June, that would be crazy because technically we've already seen a Series X game. We have seen Hellblade 2 and we've seen Halo Infinite. Now, it's been a long time since we've seen Infinite, but we have at least seen peaks at some Series X games. We have not seen, besides Godfall, which isn't a Sony IP, we haven't seen PS5 games. So I think April or May, early May. Waiting till June would be crazy. Zero the Silent Hero. Microsoft is running DirectX as its primary ray tracing API, and that's a major component of the AMD RDNA 2 collaboration. Do you think Sony's API is going to be different, extra custom? It's a good question. Ray tracing is the one thing we still don't know a lot about with PS5 because they were so brief about it. This was a very deep tech dive on the PS5 in a lot of ways, but ray tracing was quickly brushed over. Some people I've seen are theorizing they think that means that maybe Xbox is a little more advanced in the ray tracing side of things, but we don't know that for sure yet. It could be that Microsoft is going to have a little bit of a ray tracing edge, but we don't know yet. Zero the Silent Hero. The PS5 SSD is 825 gigabytes split evenly among that 12 channel thingy. Oh, okay. Interesting. Huh. It's the full size. Expect this Axiom saying around 700 gigs for games. That's so weird. I wonder how they came to that number. Interesting. GC2F guy, we'll take these questions and we'll call it a chat, everyone. Thanks for being here. Really quick, my spiel. Hate doing this part, but I got to do it. If you like the chat, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel out a bunch. Appreciate y'all being here. All right. Back to the questions. G2C2F guy, thank you for your replies for sure. Benji, if there's a better start in sales for the Xbox X versus the PS5 in the US, especially with Halo Infinite, shall we expect the PS5 Pro earlier than expected in 2 years instead of 3? US is the one country where I think there's a chance of that. That does not mean that I am predicting that Xbox Series X outsells PS5 in the US because I'm not as of now, but that is the one country it is possible because the 360 greatly outsold the PS3 in the US. It wasn't even close. It was not close at all. And the Xbox One, while it has been outsold by a pretty big gap with the PS4, it has been competitive in the US, not really anywhere else in the world. Everywhere else globally, PlayStation 4 has utterly dominated the Xbox One. But the one country it's possible right now, I would say, that Xbox could pull a lead would be the US. I don't think that would necessarily push the Pro earlier because Sony is so strong in other markets that, let's just say as a super hypothetical, they didn't outsell the Xbox in the US. More than likely, they'll be so much stronger in Europe, Japan, countries like this and areas like this. I don't think it'll push them too hard to make like a really rushed decision. If for some reason they get sold out in one market, globally, they'll probably still have a pretty big advantage. Bart Jacasa, yes, PlayStation All-Stars 2, baby, let's go. I'd love to see it. It would be fun. I think that would be an IP worth revisiting. Last questions here. Benji, I bet for that 16th studio Microsoft allegedly acquired. Ooh, I would say Team Ninja. I saw something about this, right? Didn't Microsoft kind of hint that they acquired another studio? They mentioned more studios than they actually have owned that we know of. We know. Here's what I'll say. I don't know if they acquired one or not, but we know that Phil Spencer has been saying repeatedly, multiple times, they want a Japanese or Asian-based studio. So it could be possible that they have acquired one and they just haven't announced it yet. I have no idea. But as a guess, I would guess it might be a Japanese one. Knothead 619. We need a new Resistance game. Ooh, that'd be fun. Or a remake. Yeah, I agree. A remake at least would be cool. And last question from Benji. What launch exclusive game Sony could put against Halo? I think people do not understand how Halo at launch will be huge for Microsoft. It is going to be big. Halo is a huge IP, especially in the US still. Sony will need something big for launch. My guess is going to be Horizon quickly. Maybe not at launch, but I think within the first 6 months, I think Horizon Zero Dawn 2 might be there. I don't expect God of War. I don't expect Spider-Man. I think Ratchet and Clank might be a launch game. I could see that from Insomniac. So I think they'll have a couple. I don't know if they'll have an IP. If Horizon's there, it's as big as Halo nowadays because Horizon sold over 10 million. But if it's not Horizon, they might not have a game as big as Halo day one, but they might have a couple good sized ones like Ratchet and, maybe something else. Maybe that first person shooter that Horizon, that Guerrilla Games is secretly working on besides Horizon, because they got 2 games in development, not just Horizon. All right, everyone. Thanks for the chat. It was good seeing all of y'all. I know this kind of came out of nowhere. It was sporadic, but it was a big news day. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see you on YouTube probably next week for the next live chat, and I'll see you on Twitter, basically tomorrow or soon. Thanks, everyone, and I will see you next time. Peace.